I did finish the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. One of the most original titles, I think, that I have ever heard. Now, this is one I meant to actually kind of do at the end of the month because I thought it could be like a lead-in into spooky season, like kind of a soft start, or whatever you want to call it. With this is, I think that I don't want to say it's burnout or hangover from the darkness that comes before when it comes to fantasy. I think more of what it was is I'm still so wrapped up in that world, handing me another fantasy series, which I'll talk about in a second, where I got to learn all these new characters. And my brain was like, hey, you just did this. Can you slow down? That's why I try not to do several new series all at once. But if I had known how much I was going to love The Darkness Comes Before, I would have scheduled the next ones right after it instead of trying another new fantasy book. But here is where we are. So I just say, okay, you know what? Let's take a break from that for a second. Do this horror book because, there's usually small cast. There's usually not a lot to learn there. And I was pretty happy with the book. Now, look, with Grady Hendrix, I loved My Best Friend's Exorcism. That was one of my favorite books of last year. This one didn't quite reach those heights. I think what I liked about My Best Friend's Exorcism is it's kind of fun. It was nostalgia, but it had fun in it. But it had those moments that when they did matter, they hit pretty hard. I think that was something he did very, very well. This one, it just seemed almost like it was just so self-serious. And it is. You're dealing with someone that is obviously not human that's terrorizing this neighborhood, and no one will listen to this lady. But I understand that part of it. That is a very serious subject matter. But it was just like, I don't know. I guess that was my fault. I went to it just thinking he was kind of that, hey, let's have fun. Let's do a little bit of a wacky humor in our horror sometimes. Also, if you're going to kind of make it take place in the 90s, I expect a lot more nostalgia like you would have got with My Best Friend's Exorcism being in the 80s. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily make it a bad book. These are things that I assumed. What I didn't like about it was it's clear he has an axe to grind on a particular issue, and he kind of goes back to it too many times. Now, I think there's a place for this, obviously, guys. I'm a Stephen King reader. I've read Larry Correia. I understand that people have axes to grind, and it's okay to do that in your stories sometimes. It's when you keep going back to it, and it starts to feel forced or heavy-handed or okay. Now it's starting to feel like you're preaching at me a little bit. I think there is a little bit in this book. Doesn't ruin it. Don't get me wrong. But that was kind of like, I'm really enjoying this setup, this ambiance you set up. I want to know more about all these other ladies in the book club, and all you keep doing is going back to this one thing. And it just kind of felt forced at times. However, story was very good. It was very, very tense, very uncomfortable, guys. And I say at this age with horror, it can't really scare you, but it can make you uncomfortable, and that's how you succeed. Yes, there are several times in this book where one where I even mentioned there's a part with a cockroach where I was about to throw up because it was disgusting. And it's like with all horror, guys, it's not going to be for everybody because there is some very, very uncomfortable subject matter in it. And there are some stuff that's described very, very explicitly, and it's going to turn some people off. So if you aren't a veteran of horror, I don't know if I would recommend the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I want to get that name wrong every time. I don't know if I'd recommend it to you if you're easily bothered by some subject matter. But I do think it has a good positive message. And, it's one of those where I feel like I was expecting a little bit of a twist at the end, and it didn't happen. But I also think maybe he was leaving it open to a sequel. I'm not really sure. But with this, I'll read more Grady Hendrix, without a doubt. I've liked 2 of his books so far. This would be a recommend based off those things I talked about. I do hope he just tries to stay a little more focused this time, because it was clear that there was a particular social issue that was really, really bothering him with this one, and he couldn't stop bringing it up. And I say that as someone who grew up with a single mom. I have a lot of the same things that I agree with, So it isn't me saying, oh, he talked about this thing I didn't like. That's not the kind of guy I am. Lots of authors talk about stuff that I disagree with. Doesn't change how I feel about their books. With me, it's like, hey, let's stay focused on the story because you've got a really good setup here. Let's just kind of stick to that. And I think he does that for the most part here to mixed results, but a mix to positive for sure.